What if I told you that millions of Americans could retire 10 to 15 years earlier than they think? But they're using outdated math that's keeping them trapped at their desks. Why do financial advisors tell you that you need $1.8 million to retire when the actual number might be hundreds of thousands less? Here's the shocking truth. Most Americans are over-planning for retirement because they're following rules created in 1994 for worst-case scenarios that will never happen to them. Meanwhile, they're sacrificing their health, missing their kids' childhood, and grinding through jobs they hate, all for financial security they already have. Today, I'm revealing 7 specific signs that you're ready to retire earlier than you think. The first 4 are financial, but here's the twist. The last 3 have nothing to do with money at all, and they might be the most important indicators of all. Comment: early freedom if you've ever dreamed of escaping the 9-to-5 before 65, because what I'm about to share could change your entire retirement timeline. Look, everyone obsesses over net worth, but here's what nobody talks about. Sign 1. You have no mortgage payment. The first sign you should retire earlier than you think hits most Americans where it hurts: their biggest monthly expense. For the average American family, the mortgage payment isn't just a line item in their budget. It's the financial chain that keeps them locked into working until they're 65 or older. Here's the brutal math. If your mortgage payment is $2,500 monthly, that's $30,000 per year you need to generate just to keep a roof over your head in retirement. Using the traditional 4% withdrawal rule, you'd need $750,000 in your retirement account just to cover housing costs. But the moment that mortgage disappears, your retirement needs plummet instantly. Let me tell you about Patricia, a high school teacher who realized this principle could change her entire retirement timeline. At age 52, Patricia was looking at working until 67 to accumulate enough for a comfortable retirement. Her mortgage payment was $2,200 monthly, and she assumed she'd carry it into retirement like most Americans do. Then Patricia made a radical decision. Instead of contributing the maximum to her 401k that year, she redirected that money toward paying off her mortgage aggressively. She took on tutoring work, sold items she didn't need, and lived extremely frugally for 3 years. At age 55, Patricia made her final mortgage payment. Suddenly, her monthly expenses dropped from $5,500 to $3,300. This wasn't just about saving $2,200 monthly. It was about fundamentally changing her retirement math. The ancient Romans had a concept called libertas, true freedom that came from being debt-free. Roman citizens understood that as long as they owed money to others, they were never truly free to make independent choices. A Roman with land but no debt had more real freedom than a wealthy Roman carrying heavy debts. Patricia discovered the same principle. With no mortgage payment, she realized she didn't need a $1.5 million retirement fund. She could retire comfortably with $825,000 because her monthly income needs had dropped by $2,200 forever. Here's your actionable step. Calculate your mortgage freedom number. Multiply your current monthly mortgage payment by 300. That's 25 years times 12 months. That's roughly how much less you need in retirement savings if you eliminate your mortgage payment before retiring. For most Americans, paying off their mortgage in their 50s reduces their required retirement savings by $400,000 to $800,000. That's not just money. That's years of your life you can buy back by becoming debt-free. The wealthy understand that debt payments are retirement killers. Every monthly obligation you eliminate is a step closer to financial independence, regardless of your income level. Sign 2. You understand your savings rate power. The second sign you should retire earlier than you think completely flips everything you've been taught about retirement planning. Most Americans obsess over earning more money, but the wealthy obsess over something entirely different: their savings rate. Here's a story that'll blow your mind. I know a real estate agent making $950,000 annually who's broke, and a janitor making $45,000 who's on track to retire at 55. How is this possible? The real estate agent spends $920,000 yearly on lifestyle inflation. The janitor saves 60% of his income and lives on $18,000 annually. Same retirement goal, completely different timelines. The high earner needs $23 million to maintain his lifestyle in retirement. The janitor needs $450,000. Guess who's closer to financial freedom? There's an ancient Babylonian teaching about a wealthy merchant and a poor farmer. The merchant earned 100 gold pieces monthly, but spent 99. The farmer earned 20 gold pieces monthly, but saved 10. After 10 years, the merchant had saved 120 gold pieces. The farmer had saved 1,200 gold pieces and owned the merchant's land. The Babylonians understood something we've forgotten. It's not what flows through your hands that creates wealth. It's what stays in your hands. Your savings rate is the ultimate retirement predictor. Here's the math that changed everything for me. 70% savings rate equals retire in 8 years. 50% savings rate equals retire in 14 years. 30% savings rate is 22 years. 10% savings rates retire in 42 years. The difference between saving 30% and 50% isn't just 20 percentage points, it's 8 years of your life. Let me tell you about Marcus, a software engineer making $85,000 who cracked this code. Instead of upgrading his lifestyle with every raise, Marcus kept living like he made $35,000 and automated the difference into investments. His 60% savings rate means he'll retire at 38, while his colleagues making twice as much will work until 67. Marcus told me something profound. I realized I could either live like a king for 10 years and work forever, or live like a peasant for 10 years and be free forever. Easy choice. Here's your actionable step. Calculate your current savings rate by dividing your annual savings by your annual after-tax income. If it's below 20%, your retirement planning is broken, regardless of your income. Then run the numbers. How much would you need to save to retire in 15 years instead of 30? Most people discover they can cut their working years in half just by increasing their savings rate from 15% to 40%. The wealthy don't work harder for money, they save harder for money. Sign 3. You have diversified income streams. The third sign you should retire earlier than you think breaks the biggest trap, keeping Americans chained to their desks until 70, single income dependency. Most people have built themselves a beautiful financial prison. One job, one paycheck, one source of survival. But here's what the wealthy figured out. The moment you have multiple income streams, traditional retirement math becomes obsolete. You're no longer planning for zero income at retirement. You're planning for reduced income while maintaining cash flow. There's an ancient Jewish teaching about a wise farmer who dug 3 wells on his property. His neighbor mocked him. Why waste time digging 3 wells when one gives you all the water you need? The wise farmer replied, when drought comes, 1 well runs dry. When winter comes, 1 well freezes. When spring floods come, 1 well gets contaminated, but a man with 3 wells always has water. Years later, during a severe drought, the neighbor's single well dried up, and he had to abandon his farm. The wise farmer's 3 wells sustained him through every season. Your income streams are your financial wells. A job is just 1 well, and jobs can disappear overnight through layoffs, health issues, or economic downturns. Let me tell you about Jennifer, a nurse making $72,000 who discovered she was closer to retirement than she thought. Jennifer had quietly built 3 additional income wells, $800 monthly from a rental property, $400 monthly from dividend-paying stocks, and $600 monthly from freelance medical consulting. Her total passive income was $1,800 monthly, $21,600 annually. When Jennifer calculated her retirement expenses, she realized she only needed $35,000 yearly to live comfortably. Her passive income was already covering 62% of her retirement needs. This revelation changed everything. Instead of working until 67 to build a $875,000 nest egg, Jennifer realized she only needed $335,000 to bridge the gap between her passive income and total expenses. She could retire at 58 instead of 67. Here's your actionable step. List every income source you have beyond your primary job. Include rental income, dividend payments, side business profits, royalties, part-time work, everything that generates money without your full-time employment. Add up the annual total and divide by your estimated annual retirement expenses. If your non-job income covers 60 to 80% of your needs, you're much closer to early retirement than traditional calculators suggest. The wealthy don't depend on jobs for income. They use jobs to build income-generating assets that eventually replace the job entirely. Sign 4. You have 20x annual expenses. The fourth sign you should retire earlier than you think challenges the most sacred rule in retirement planning. And this one could save you years of unnecessary work. The traditional advice says you need 25 times your annual expenses saved to retire safely using the 4% withdrawal rule. But here's the shocking truth. Even the creator of that rule says it's too conservative. Most Americans are oversaving for retirement because they're following outdated math from 1994. William Bengen created the 4% rule using only 2 asset classes: intermediate-term treasury bonds and large-cap U.S. stocks. That's it. No international diversification, no small-cap stocks, no REITs, no emerging markets. But Bengen himself has updated his own rule. In recent interviews, he's increased his personal withdrawal rate to 4.7% because modern portfolios are far more sophisticated than his original research assumed. That seemingly small increase from 4% to 4.7% changes everything. Here's the math that could give you back years of your life. If you need $50,000 annually in retirement, the old rule says you need $1.25 million, 25x. The updated rule says you need $1.6 million, roughly 20x. That's a $190,000 difference, potentially 3 to 5 years less you need to work. There's an ancient Greek principle called the golden mean, finding the optimal point between extremes. Aristotle taught that courage lies between cowardice and recklessness, generosity between stinginess and waste. The same applies to retirement planning. There's a sweet spot between undersaving and oversaving. Let me tell you about David, an accountant who is planning to work until 65 to reach his $1.8 million safe retirement number. When David recalculated using the 20x rule based on his $72,000 annual expenses, he realized he only needed $1.44 million. He'd already saved $1.5 million at age 59. David retired immediately, 6 years earlier than planned, because he stopped following outdated conservative advice designed for the worst-case historical scenarios. The original 4% rule was designed to survive the Great Depression and World Wars, scenarios where retirees needed their money to last through economic catastrophe. But most retirees today will face normal market conditions with modern, diversified portfolios. Here's your actionable step. Calculate both numbers. Multiply your annual retirement expenses by 25, then by 20. The difference between those numbers represents years of your life you might be overworking. The wealthy don't oversave for retirement. They optimize for freedom and calculate the minimum needed to maintain their desired lifestyle safely. Sign 5. You have good health purpose outside work. The fifth sign you should retire earlier than you think has nothing to do with your bank account and everything to do with your most precious, non-renewable resource, your health and energy. This is where most Americans get retirement planning completely backwards. Most people sacrifice their health to build wealth, then spend their wealth trying to buy back their health. They work themselves into stress, exhaustion, and chronic illness for decades, assuming they'll live it up in retirement. But here's the brutal reality. The longer you wait to retire, the less capable you become of enjoying that freedom. I watched this happen to my own father. He didn't retire until 73, convinced he needed just a little more financial security. By the time he finally stopped working, he had the money to travel anywhere in the world, but he lacked the energy and desire to leave his living room. All those years of grinding had worn him down to the point where retirement became about recovery, not adventure. There's ancient Roman wisdom that captures this perfectly. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." The Romans understood that time and vitality were finite resources that couldn't be accumulated like gold. But here's the other crucial piece most people miss. You need something meaningful to do in retirement. Early retirees often make a critical mistake. They retire from something without retiring to something. They escape their job, but have no purpose waiting for them. Let me tell you about Sarah, a marketing director who retired at 52. Sarah had the finances figured out, but spent 6 months watching Netflix and feeling empty. She realized she'd defined herself entirely through work and had no identity beyond her career title. Sarah went back to work part-time, not for the money, but because she hadn't prepared mentally for retirement. The second time she retired at 55, she had a plan. Volunteer at animal shelters, teach financial literacy to young adults, and train for hiking trips she'd postponed for decades. The difference was night and day. Sarah's second retirement was stuck because she had a purpose waiting for her. Here's your actionable step. Make 2 lists. First, write down 3 activities that energize you, but that you never have time for currently. Second, identify 1 way you could contribute to your community or help others using your skills and experience. If you can't fill those lists with activities that genuinely excite you, you're not ready to retire, regardless of your financial situation. The wealthy retire to something, not just from something. Sign 6. Work is becoming stressful/unfulfilling. The 6th sign you should retire earlier than you think is the one most Americans ignore until it's too late. When your job starts stealing your soul and you have the financial resources to escape. If you find yourself with the Sunday scaries every week, dreading Monday mornings, or feeling like your work is slowly killing your spirit, it's time to run the numbers on early retirement. Here's what most people don't calculate: the hidden cost of staying in a miserable job when you could afford to leave. Chronic work stress doesn't just make you unhappy, it makes you sick. And sick is expensive. The American Heart Association links job stress to heart disease, stroke, and diabetes. The American Psychological Association connects workplace burnout to depression, anxiety, and addiction. When you're financially ready to retire but staying for just a few more years, you're not just trading time for money, you're trading health for wealth. There's ancient Stoic wisdom that perfectly captures this trap. Seneca wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." The Stoics understood that clinging to situations that no longer serve you prevents you from discovering what could serve you better. Let me tell you about Michael, a corporate lawyer making $250,000 who was financially ready to retire at 56, but stayed for the security. Michael spent 2 more years in a toxic work environment, developing chronic insomnia and high blood pressure. His medical bills over those 2 years exceeded $15,000, and his stress spending on retail therapy added another $25,000. When Michael finally retired at 58, he calculated that those extra 2 years of work had actually cost him money. When you factored in health costs, stress spending, and the compound growth he missed by not moving his money to a more conservative retirement allocation. But here's the deeper truth. When you're financially secure enough to retire, your tolerance for workplace nonsense should drop to 0. You're no longer working because you have to. You're working because you choose to. And if that choice is making you miserable, it's a bad choice. Here's your actionable step. Rate your job satisfaction on a scale of 1 to 10 in 3 areas: daily enjoyment, stress level, and sense of purpose. If your average score is below 6 and you're financially ready for retirement, you're probably staying too long. Calculate the total cost of workplace stress. Medical expenses, therapy, stress spending, lost sleep, missed family time. Often, the financial cost of staying in a bad job exceeds the financial benefit. The wealthy understand that money should buy freedom, not golden handcuffs. Sign 7. You've achieved your career goals. The seventh and final sign you should retire earlier than you think is perhaps the most overlooked, when you've already won the career game you set out to play. Most Americans never pause to ask themselves, what was I actually trying to achieve, and have I achieved it? This isn't about reaching the absolute pinnacle of your industry or becoming the CEO. It's about reaching the goals you originally set for yourself when you started your career journey. Maybe you wanted to become a department manager, build a specific skill set, work on a meaningful project, or reach a certain income level. If you've checked those boxes, continuing to work might just be momentum, not purpose. There's a profound concept in ancient Greek philosophy called enough, knowing when you've achieved what you set out to accomplish. Aristotle taught that the wise person recognizes when they've reached their intended destination and doesn't keep traveling just because the road continues. Let me tell you about Robert, a software engineer who realized he'd been working on autopilot for 5 years. At 51, Robert had achieved everything on his original career wish list. He'd become a senior architect, led major product launches, mentored dozens of developers, and earned more than he'd ever dreamed possible as a kid. But Robert kept working because that's what people do. He wasn't learning anything new. He wasn't being challenged. He was essentially doing the same job with different project names, earning money he didn't need for a lifestyle he'd already optimized. When Robert finally retired at 53, he said something that stuck with me. I realized I was like a video game player who'd beaten the final boss but kept playing the same level over and over. At some point, you have to turn off the console and go live in real life. The wealthy understand something most people miss. There's a difference between working because you're building towards something and working because you don't know what else to do. Here's your actionable step. Write down the career goals you had when you started your professional journey. Be honest, not what you think you should want now, but what you actually wanted then. Then evaluate. Have you achieved 80% or more of those original goals? If yes, and you're financially ready, you might be working out of habit rather than purpose. The most successful people know when to leave the stage while the applause is still ringing. Don't miss your kids. Childhood grinding for money you'll never spend. So here's the truth that could save you 10 to 20 years of unnecessary work. Early retirement isn't about being rich, it's about being smart with what you already have. Most Americans are closer to financial freedom than they realize, but they're using outdated math and ignoring non-financial readiness signs. Let's recap the 7 signs. No mortgage payment, understanding your savings rate power, diversified income streams, having 20x expenses saved, not 25x, good health plus purpose, work becoming toxic, and achieving your original career goals. The person grinding until 70 might have all the money in the world, but no energy to enjoy it. The person who retires at 55 with just enough might experience decades of freedom, health, and purpose that no amount of extra money could buy. Here's what I want you to do this week. Calculate your 20x number. That's your annual expenses multiplied by 20. Then calculate your current savings rate. Finally, honestly assess which of the 7 signs apply to your situation right now. Comment below and tell me which sign hit you hardest and what age you're now targeting for retirement. Are you realizing you could retire at 58 instead of 67? Or discovering you need to build more income streams first? Should I break down the exact early retirement portfolio strategy next? Or reveal how to structure your finances for maximum tax efficiency in early retirement? Drop your suggestions below. Remember this: every year you work beyond financial readiness is a year you're trading for money you might not need. Your future self is counting on you to be brave enough to calculate the real numbers. Don't wait until 70 to start living. Start planning your freedom today.